When you get a diagnosis like autism or Down syndrome or any other disability for your child, parents tend to have a lot of grief and have confusion and almost despair. Today, we're going to talk about that. I'm Dr. Mary Barbera, autism mom, behavior analyst, and best-selling author. Each week, I provide you with some of my ideas about turning autism or signs of autism around. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do that now. Today, we're sharing a small excerpt from podcast 217 with Jillian Benfield, who is the mom to three, including a mom of an 8-year-old with Down syndrome. She wrote an excellent book that just came out recently called The Gift of the Unexpected. And it's all about how she took the real despair she felt and the grief she felt with her son's diagnosis and transformed into the person that she is today. And her book is beautiful, and we want to share an excerpt now. What is it about?
So the book is about really how the unexpected things that happen to us in our lives can ultimately help us become who we're supposed to be. That doesn't mean that the unexpected things that happen to us in our lives happen on purpose. There are some things that are unexpected that are just too painful, and that I would never tell anyone that, well, this happened so that this could happen. But the things that happen to us, including having a child with a disability, are able to show us who we really are while pointing us to who we are really supposed to become. So the book, a lot is in part about that grief. And then I had to dissect, why am I grieving so much? Why did I grieve so much? And at the end of the day, I realized that I believed at the time when I had my child, and for years after probably, that my worth was attached to my resume. So if I believe my worth is attached to my accomplishments and my attachments, right? Like your husband went right to the, he'll never get married, he'll never go to college, right? Absolutely, that's where our minds went to, because that's what we value as a society. There was a Gallup poll that I quote in the book, where when we ask people what we view as success, marriage is at the top of that list, followed by education, right? But those same people who were questioned wanted to break away from that, right? They wanted to break away from this version of success and have their own unique versions of success. And my point in saying that is, the unexpected can help us unlearn the bad ideas we have received from society that our worth is attached to our output, when really our worth is intrinsic. And so that's the crux of the book. It's about how we can unlearn the bad ideas that we have been given by society, by our churches, that tell us that we have to earn our worth in this Americanized way, when really our worth is something that has already been given to us. And when we are living in that place, then we can really become the fullest versions of ourselves.
Yeah, I like that. We did do another episode with a mom who had a son with Down syndrome and autism. We can link that in the show notes. I did an episode with my husband too, which we can link in the show notes. And another thing I liked about your book related to kind of my husband and our grief was, you said in the first chapter or two that your good memories are fuzzy. And I always say that. I'm like, I have a bad memory for things, like, were we ever at a Jimmy Buffett concert? Yeah, we were. We were there 3 times. We had a party at our house. I'm like, really? Oh, I don't remember. But you said for things that are problems, for bad things, quote unquote, bad things, the details are so there. So like when I interviewed my husband, it's like, and maybe it's because I tell the story, I write about our story all the time. So like, it's a part of my, more normal talking about it, but I remember the details. I remember where we were standing, the carpet color of our old house, like the details of when you get quote unquote bad news, you know, it was something I had never read before. So
yeah, I just remember that feeling so distinctly, like you enter a tunnel, you know, and everything in that tunnel becomes so crystal clear around you. And it's kind of like you're having an out of body experience, I guess. Yeah, and I do talk about that in the book, because I think anyone who has been delivered any kind of really hard news can relate to that. I think that's a very common human experience.
yeah, you say tunnel, like I kind of use the analogy, like I felt like I had fallen into a deep hole with Lucas and had to figure out how to get myself out of it with him on my back, you know, like it was a lot. And it was a lot of, you know, where do you start? What is it? What are the you know, outcomes? What could we, you know, and with autism, the range is so much, probably more than Down syndrome even. You know, you have people with autism that I've interviewed that are fully conversational, going to college, driving, getting married. And
I think
go ahead.
I was going to say, with that hole, you know, and you trying to dig yourself out of it, you know, that piece of the going through the logistics is not necessarily the hardest piece, even though it's super hard, right? Like, to do the research, to find the things that you need to find to help your child, to call this person, to deal with this insurance agency. And you can go through those motions, which is difficult. And it's what I always say is that being a parent of a kid with a disability is more. You know, I've had people say, well, you could say this about all parenting. I'm like, yes, and also no, because it's more. There is a layer to my life that you cannot understand. But you can deal with that more in your mind. The hardest part is dealing with that under layer when it comes to yourself, you know, and really observing your grief and sitting with it long enough and allowing it to teach you. And so that you can eventually move forward, not only move forward though, but move forward changed.
Yeah. And I think another reason why grief is hard to talk about in the autism world is because there's a subset, you know, a minority of very vocal people who have very high levels of autism or self-diagnosed autism, who believe autism is a gift and you should just be, you know, you should never have gift. Like the analogy of the funeral, like I could get backlash for that, for saying,
Sure.
And it's like, do you have that in your life? Like, are people expecting you to be like just happy and accepting? And
sure. So I try to be careful about what I say about Anderson in the hard parts of our lives, but because I do believe that Down syndrome is intrinsically tied to his identity. I believe that he would not be who he is without Down syndrome, and I believe my son is who he should be. But what I will say is the word that I typically use when discussing the hard parts of our lives is the word "and." You know, like I used to be a "but" user. So it would be like, you know, going to all these medical appointments is really hard, but it's so worth it. You know, I would minimize the hard parts of my life. But now what I do, or what I try to do, is just hold it in both hands, right? So disappointment and joy can coexist. You know, stress, extreme stress that can come with parenting a child with a disability, and gratitude can also coexist. So I try to live my life not in a but world, not where I minimize the hard parts. And there are hard parts. There are hard parts. I told you before we started, you know, the things that I thought would be the hardest, the idea that maybe he would always live with us. And I don't know if he will, but maybe he will. I don't know. That part's not hard for me anymore, or as much as it was. The hard parts for us are really behavior related and relate to that ADHD component and things that I think your listener can relate to. Those exist, the hard parts exist. And also, I can honestly tell you, I am grateful that my child is who he is. And I'm grateful that I get to parent him. And I am not the same. I would not be the person I am today without him. And both of those things are true. And so that's where I try to live while trying to respect my child's privacy. I'm sure I've failed. I'm sure, I have gotten backlash from similar advocates before, and I try to learn from that and try to live in this and world.
I hope you enjoyed that small snip from podcast 217. If you did, you could listen to the whole thing, and you could also attend a free workshop or grab some links to all kinds of things in the description below. And if you like this video, I would love a thumbs up, share it with somebody who might benefit, or leave us a comment. And I'll see you right here next time.